morning, everyone, and welcome to episode 19 of the Early Edition, brought to you by Endless Living, and I'm your host, Michael Barnett. Today we're going to focus on Gomer and Germany, for starters. Ezekiel 38 lists a number of countries that are involved in the great attack against Israel. So why do they all have to have different names? Well, wouldn't it be a little strange to you if Russia was called Russia 2,591 years ago? It's important to understand that Ezekiel 38 was written in 570 BC. A lot has changed in this world since then. Imagine that you are Ezekiel. Imagine trying to explain to the people of Ezekiel what a cell phone is, what a computer is, what a vacuum cleaner is, what an automobile is, internet. Imagine telling them what a skyscraper is. But Ezekiel saw all of these things in his vision. To kind of give you an idea, we're going to take a little ride in an elevator. You are presently looking at New York City in the year 1600 AD, and this is how much it has changed since that time. It's remarkable. You can see the buildings going up. Most of the work took place in the 1800s and the 1900s. This is just 421 years. Again, Ezekiel wrote this book 2,591 years ago. Not only did things look different, but technology was different as well. Imagine going to sleep, waking up in the year 4612. Is it possible the world could get that old? I seriously doubt the world will even get to the 23rd century, but the logistics of this is irrelevant to the subject matter. I'm basically saying that if we were Ezekiel today, 4612 and beyond would be what we were told to prophesy about. That's tough. So you see jets flying overhead. You're in Israel and you know your directions based on where you live, and you see this massive airstrike and tanks and infantry coming up over the hills in numbers so massive that it looks like black oil pouring over the hills from the north. You're trying to make sense of everything to these people 2,591 years ago, and you're limited on paper. Are you really going to tell them that they had magic sticks that seemed to put holes in people 100 yards away from them when they pulled some kind of a trigger? Are you going to tell them that there were massive metal birds that seemed to produce some line of smoke that would eventually engulf whole buildings in flame? Mind you, you've never even seen a stick of dynamite. Isaiah gives the best description when he foresees the nuclear warfare that will kill 1/4 of the world's population, as it says in Revelation. I mean, Isaiah was written nearly 2,721 years ago. How do you describe entire buildings incinerated, vaporized on contact? Isaiah describes such a situation as people's faces being flames. I mean, the dynamics of such a catastrophe has never been witnessed by these men on a small scale. The footage you are seeing now is real. The explosions are not Hollywood. They were recorded by Allied forces with the U.S. against ISIS. The prophets have never even seen explosions like this. And you need to ask yourself, have you until now? Not a lot of us in America see that. In truth, the nuclear warfare simulation you saw before the ISIS video is only theoretical. Based on the energy of such a missile and the reaction of the elements, one can get an idea of what it would look like. The Tsar Bomba detonated 4 kilometers or 2.5 miles above the ground, which produced a mushroom cloud 60 kilometers or 37 miles high, is one of the most amazing spectacles that you've ever seen. Third-degree burns from this blast were recorded as being possible hundreds of kilometers around. Third-degree burns, I say. The kind that requires skin grafting. Very dangerous burns. Not just a burn you get from touching something too hot. The detonation could be seen 1,000 kilometers away. That's 620 miles away. If you're in North Carolina, if you're in Tarboro, North Carolina, like me, you could have seen the blast all the way over in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. The shock wave, which was measured on the Richter scale at 5, orbited the Earth not once, not twice, but 3 times around the Earth. Here's a diagram of the Himalayas, the average height an airliner flies, so that you can see how much bigger this explosion was than Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The power of this explosion was 1,500 times bigger than Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined. The most amazing part about this bomb is that the Russians say that this was detonated without the use of uranium. If it was introduced to the compound, the theoretical blast would mean devastation on a far larger scale. So back to what I was saying. Isaiah and Ezekiel haven't even witnessed a stick of trinitrotoluene or TNT. Never seen anything like that go off. But these prophets actually saw a real nuclear attack in the future. Just think about that for a moment. Here's something else to consider as well. There were hardly any people on the earth at that time as well. Do you know how many people populate the world today? 7.5 billion people. Do you know how many people there were in Ezekiel's day? Based on the coefficient of births through time, along with possible unknown variables that occurred at certain periods, like the baby boomers or the bubonic plague, for example, scientists have calculated about 100 million people in Ezekiel's day, and that's actually a generous figure. 100 million is a lot of people, but it's only a tenth of 1 billion. If the population today were sand, it would fill 2 medium-sized dump trucks, about 20 tons. In Ezekiel's day, the number of people would be equivalent to 10 bags of play sand, which is a quarter of 1 ton only, a quarter of that. Naturally, with a number like that, you're not going to have names like Russia or Germany or France. Rather, you're going to have tribal names. Have you ever read 1 Chronicles? There are 911 names mentioned in the first 9 chapters alone. While this generally might not seem very helpful, to understand where Ezekiel is talking about in chapter 38, this is an essential book. 1 Chronicles chapter 1 and verse 1 says, Adam, Sheth, Enosh, we know them, Kenan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, okay, I'm not sure where we are yet. Oh, here we are, Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshech, and Tiras. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, and Riphath, and Togarmah. Just to give you an example of how we are able to know that Gomer is in the area of Germany, you have to first remember it's not really based on the borders we know today. It's based on people. The lines are always changing with people, but based on Ezekiel's records in his time, which was a lot closer than we are to the flood, you're looking in this area here. You've got Magog, who is called the chief prince, which is Rosh in Hebrew, ultimately the root of the name Russia. Chief prince over Meshech, which is where we get the name Moscow from. Meshech is also pronounced Mosach, but you can see how these families dispersed northward, and Magog is the chief of all these northern families. Of all the names that have changed in Russia, Moscow has never changed the name. Germany and Russia are very close allies, but what interests me the most about this study is the name Ashkenaz, the son of Gomer, according to 1 Chronicles 1:6. In Ezekiel 37, the chapter before our study today, we see that there will be a great return of the Jewish peoples from various nations, which is happening right now. There's a group of Jews known as Ashkenazi Jews. It's a very common name to them. They're very familiar with it, very popular. But coincidentally, when you ask a Jew what Ashkenaz means to them, they refer to a location. The people who are Ashkenazi Jews have piercing blue eyes. And in this case, an Ashkenazi Jew is normally from Germany. The rapture is certainly imminent. But can you see how Ezekiel 38 could theoretically take place before that? Next week, we'll be revisiting some of the things that are going on in the biological realm of prophecy once more as we revisit the mark of the beast and how everything is just utterly becoming possible technologically. Mind you, I'm just speculating and creating theories which just happen to fit the facts. This poor planet has seen a lot of fireworks, but I'm afraid she's about to see some of the biggest ones yet. Are you ready? The fuse is already lit. I hope you will consider not being around once it reaches detonation. And I think that's my cue to leave. See you next time.